We've optimized planning to ensure we deliver the most value from each story. Now let's look at a way to increase the number of stories we deliver by changing how developers read code and, as a result, get rid of a ton of waste. The whole point to this presentation and simulation is to help non-coders, like me, frankly, facilitate different coding techniques to get rid of that waste. As such, we have me as the non-coder, and we will have Arlo as the intimidating coder who has an answer for everything. Which leads me to exactly why I don't want to facilitate coding techniques to the Arlos of the world. Leading a mob for devs about anything coding related sounds terrible. As a non-coder myself, I can say that this does take a lot of courage, but we do give you the path. But I really want to know why I'm doing this. And truly, there are some fantastic reasons. Less time is spent on the stories because they're saving time reading code and have a side effect of creating fewer bugs. While we know refactoring makes future stories easier, the myth is that it makes present stories longer. However, there is a way to refactor while reading code that makes the current story also cheaper. And finally, the big emotional benefit is that the devs will really appreciate what you're sharing.
The definition of refactoring is to change code without changing behavior. If the real world lived up to that definition, it would be as safe to refactor as it is to read code. Then we could read code by first refactoring that code to be simple, and then read the simple code. This is much like reading a foreign language article by first translating it into my own language and then reading that article. Let's look at how to make that true. So how do we make that true in the real world? Well, it turns out there are multiple definitions of the word refactoring. There's one set of people who think of refactoring as simply editing code. While they are making other changes, or maybe on its own, they will simply change the code from one design to another with the intention of not introducing any behavior change. Unfortunately, there's a very high risk that while they're making that change, they accidentally make some behavior change. This is why TDD proponents have proposed an additional definition of refactoring, editing well-tested code. If you have good unit test coverage over your code, then a large number of the mistakes that you might make while editing them will be found by your unit test suite, and this dramatically reduces risk. However, there is a third definition, actually the original definition of refactoring, and that is to execute refactoring by only executing code transformations. So what do I mean by code transformations? Well, an example of that in English might be if I start with the sentence, Bob is hungry because he has not eaten in 2 days. I could change that to the pair of English sentences, Bob is hungry, he has not eaten in 2 days. The meaning is identical. I might interpret them or feel them differently, but the meaning is identical. I have not changed their behavior as sentences. In the same sense, I want to do code transformations, changes to my code language that I will interpret differently from a design, but they have exactly the same meaning. And there is in fact a refactoring that is the same as that one for the sentences. It's called extract method. I can turn one large method into 2 smaller methods, and in that way I will interpret them differently as a human, but by the rules of the language they will behave exactly identically. In fact, because programming languages are formal languages, there are rules for the semantics that guarantee that certain pieces of code will be identical. And these code transformations take advantage of those language semantics. They provide changes that, according to the rules of the language, are guaranteed never to change behavior. As a result, this kind of code transformation has extremely low risk. When should I refactor? Well, answering this question depends on which of the prior 3 definitions of refactoring you use. First, we have to explore the question of how we spend our time during story development. Developers spend about 70% of their time reading code, even more in deeply legacy code bases. Understanding the customer accounts for another 5 to 10%, leaving 20 to 25% available for coding and testing or bug fixing. Those take about the same amount of time, so they will spend equal time testing or bug fixing as they did writing the code. And this is why traditional refactoring makes sense. If you increase your coding time by 20% now, but you save 20% of your reading time later, you will get ahead over time. It often makes sense to invest now to save later, but we can do better than that. In order to do better than that, we have to look at when it is safe to refactor. If I refactor by editing code, then I can refactor safely any time where there will be time after my refactoring to fix my errors and to find them. So I need both additional coding time and testing time after my refactoring in order to fix any errors I might make. That means it is safe to refactor early on in the coding section. However, if I am refactoring by editing well-tested code in the TDD approach, I can refactor a significantly greater section of the pie. Now I can refactor any time where I will be running unit tests after my refactoring. That means I can refactor throughout the entire coding section and even part of the testing section, because I will continue to run my unit tests after that. I can do even better than that. If I'm refactoring by transforming code, then it is safe to refactor any time that I am interacting with the code. I don't need even the tests to support and protect my refactoring. That means I can now refactor anytime I am reading code, anytime I am changing code, the coding section, and anytime that I am testing and debugging. The only time I can't refactor is when I'm busy interacting with the customer. When is the best time to refactor? Reading time is both the largest slice and the earliest in the story. Investing in the biggest slice gives you the most time savings for this story. Additionally, investing in an early slice allows you to save time in future slices. But reading code must be totally safe. Thus, you can only refactor while reading if you use the refactoring style based on code transformations. Code by Refactoring Foundations teaches the code transformations needed while reading code and helps devs become fast and fluent.
So Arlo will give you a slightly more technical answer to this question, but here is the important answer. It takes code that's really frustrating to read and makes it easy. That's a win for productivity and dev satisfaction. So it's worth it, and we won't leave you dangling. You can learn how to facilitate this mob and you will get appreciation for it. And of course, never forget the 4 major reasons this matters for both you and for them, so that you can share effectively when they hear about more training. The good news is that not only do we provide a simulated breakdown of the facilitation steps, but we give you a facilitator's guide that I strongly recommend that you go ahead and download as you watch the next 8 videos. Also, you can chat with us at any point on the Slack channel. And don't forget to subscribe for the other deconstructed conference talks in our YouTube channel.